Welcome to Shadow Fable. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy stories that whisper dread into your ear. It started with the antenna. Robert wasn't sure why he'd bothered to adjust it. The box television in the attic was older than his youngest memory, and he hadn't touched it in decades. It had come with the house, tucked in the dusty corner of the attic beside a stack of water-warped TV guides and a rotary phone wrapped in its own coiled cord. The attic was where forgotten things went. Robert, now 72 and widowed, wasn't prone to nostalgia, but the storm had knocked out the internet. So he climbed up the attic ladder, a flashlight wedged beneath his chin, and sat cross-legged in front of the old Zenith. The screen was dark, a dull mirror reflecting a crooked old man and the wooden beams behind him. He turned the dial. Click, static, click, dead air, click. Then something strange. The screen flickered. A low hum buzzed like a trapped fly inside his ears. A picture emerged, grainy black and white footage of a street. Empty, the camera was still. No narration, no music, just the faint whistle of wind through static. Robert leaned in. He waited, watched. 5 full minutes passed. Nothing moved. Then, at once, a figure walked into frame, sideways at first, then turning slowly, stiffly toward the camera. They wore a long coat. Their face wasn't quite right. Not distorted, just unfinished. The footage cut. Robert blinked. The screen went black. He leaned back, trying to recall the channel number he'd stopped on. The dial had no markings left. He turned it slowly, deliberately, but nothing came back. Just fuzz and the low hiss of an empty broadcast spectrum. He told himself it was probably an old emergency channel or something from a local studio left running on a loop. Still, when the power came back on later that night, Robert found himself thinking about the faceless figure. The next evening, after his nightly routine of soup and reruns, he climbed back into the attic. He turned the television on. Static, more static, then flicker. A hallway now. Peeling wallpaper. A timestamp burned into the bottom right corner, blinking 12:01 a.m. No sound but a barely perceptible hum, like the inside of an empty refrigerator. Robert leaned closer. The camera was moving now, slowly gliding down the hallway as though held by unseen hands. A door on the left trembled slightly, as if touched by a breeze, but the air was still. There were no windows. He watched, his breath slowing, his posture rigid, transfixed. Then, another cut. Black screen. He turned the dial again, frustrated, but the footage wouldn't return. That night, Robert dreamt of the hallway, the door that trembled, the hum that grew louder until it vibrated in his teeth. In the dream, he was holding the camera. By the end of the week, the broadcast had become a ritual. He would make tea, go upstairs, and sit before the screen, tuning the dial with surgical precision. The broadcasts were never the same. Sometimes it was a room, sparse furniture, flickering lights, water-stained ceilings. Other times, it was a dark tunnel, concrete walls that seemed to breathe. Always the same humming, sometimes louder, sometimes distant. Always the faceless ones, never directly in frame, but glimpsed in reflections, shadows, or lingering behind corners. Robert began taking notes. He drew crude maps of the hallways he saw. He wrote down the numbers on doors, the timestamps, the angles of shadows. He stopped answering the phone. Neighbors knocked once or twice and then gave up. The real world receded behind the glow of static and grayscale. But it wasn't obsession. No, not exactly. Robert wasn't chasing something. He was being shown something. On the 8th night, the broadcast changed. The screen lit up. But this time the footage was from a street he recognized, his own. Camera angle from across the street, fixed on his front porch. He froze. There was no mistaking the crooked railing, the chipped paint on the steps. At first, the porch was empty. Then, slowly, a figure stepped into frame. The same long coat, the same faceless head. It stood still for 5 minutes, then turned to look directly into the camera, as if acknowledging Robert himself. The screen cut to black. He turned off the TV and backed away, heart punching at his ribs. He slept on the couch that night. Didn't go upstairs, didn't even look toward the attic door. But in his dreams, the hum returned. This time, it had a rhythm. 3 tones. Low, low, high, over and over, like a broken music box echoing in a cement basement. The next day, he noticed something odd in the real world. The streetlight across from his house, the one visible in last night's broadcast, was gone. Not broken. Gone. Just an empty patch of sidewalk, the pole vanished without a trace. He called the city to report it. They told him no such light had ever existed there. Robert knew better. He opened his notebook, flipped through pages of maps and timestamps, and underlined a note he had written 2 nights earlier. Cross-street lamp flickers, 12:07 a.m. The footage had shown the flickering. It had been there, and now it wasn't. Something was changing. Bleeding. Whatever he'd been watching wasn't a recording, it was a window, and it was getting closer. When he turned on the TV that night, there was no static, just the hum, louder than ever. The screen was black, but something flickered faintly in the corner. Movement, almost like shadows passing behind fogged glass. And then, a voice. Not loud, not clear. Just a whisper buried in white noise. He couldn't make out the words, but it was speaking. To him, it repeated. And then again. Each time, it grew clearer. Not a voice at all, not human, but something imitating speech. Like it was learning how to talk. He turned it off. Sat in silence, the hum remained. Not in the room, not in the air. In his ears, under his skin, he couldn't sleep. The hum wouldn't let him. It vibrated in his bones. A tuning fork struck deep inside his skull. At 3 a.m, he found himself sitting in the attic again, wrapped in a blanket, the television screen cold and black. He didn't touch the dial, didn't need to. The screen turned on by itself. The camera was moving again. Not in a hallway, not in a tunnel, it was in a house. His house. The footage showed his kitchen, the faded linoleum floor, the chipped counter where Margaret used to place her tea mug every morning. Then it shifted, panning slowly into the living room. The camera paused on the armchair where he always sat. Empty. Then the camera turned, as if on cue, and pointed up the staircase, toward the attic, toward him. Robert stood up so fast the chair behind him toppled. He felt breathless, cold, like the room had lost all its air. The camera climbed the stairs step by agonizing step. He stared, heart hammering, as the view moved up, then stopped just before the attic door. Then knock. He jumped, not from the TV, from the attic door behind him. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. He backed away, eyes darting between the door and the screen. On the TV, the view remained still, waiting. Then the door on screen creaked open, and so did the one behind him. No one stood there, nothing entered. But the hum grew louder, no longer a sound, a presence. It slid into the room, unseen but undeniable. His legs buckled. He sank to the floor, clutching his ears. But it wasn't in his ears anymore. It was inside him, a buzzing beneath his thoughts, a voice without words, a language of pressure and vibration, a message meant for something deeper than the mind. He began to weep, not out of fear, out of recognition. It knew him, and he had always known it. The days blurred. He stopped eating, stopped going downstairs. The screen never turned off anymore. Sometimes it showed footage of other houses, empty living rooms, hallways, basements. Sometimes it showed people, always from behind, always watching, never knowing, until they did. He watched a woman in a flower print robe walk past a mirror. When her reflection turned to look at her, she dropped her cup. He watched a child in a raincoat stand motionless in front of a swing set while something behind the fence leaned forward, closer, closer. He watched a man, middle-aged, familiar, step into frame in a dark room. Only after a moment did he realize it was himself. Footage of him in the attic, watching the television. The loop had closed. He didn't remember falling asleep, but when he awoke, the screen was blank. For the first time in days, the hum was gone. He felt emptied. He stood, joints aching, and shuffled toward the attic door. The morning light pierced through the cracks in the wood. It was over. Whatever it was, it had passed. He reached for the light switch. Paused. A sound. Faint. From behind the walls. Not the hum, a whisper. Just one word. Closer. The power went out again that night. The house was silent. Robert sat in the living room, wrapped in his robe, staring at the blank television. Not the one upstairs. The one downstairs. A newer model, flat screen, smart TV. It turned on, no remote, no hands, just a flicker. The hum began, low, low, high. And on the screen, the attic, live feed. Camera slowly turning, toward the trapdoor, toward him. The screen shimmered, and something stepped through. Not out of the screen, out of the space inside it. It had no face, no shape, just angles that didn't belong in this world. It didn't move toward him. It just stood and watched, as if waiting, as if it had always been there, as if it was home. The next morning, the house was empty. Neighbors assumed he'd passed quietly in the night. No signs of struggle, no mess, no Robert. Just a chair, facing a television that played nothing but static. And every so often, if you sat long enough, you might see something move, just past the edge of the frame. Watching, waiting, listening for the hum, low, low, high.